Hello, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to give you a quick roundup of our recent attendance at the South Shields Slaughter. So this was a doubles event where you were randomly paired with another player at the start of the event. 1,500 point lists with a few restrictions on how you had to build it and what you could take. There's another video up of my Ogre army, the list that I took there, and the comp restrictions explained in that one. So check that out if you want to see what I took with me and the limitations on building. It was 3 games across the course of one day. Each of the missions was slightly tweaked to have some different objectives and different ways of scoring victory points in it. So I was paired up with Sam, who had a high elf army. And on the face of it, a really good draw for me there. His list, I think off the top of my head, it was led by Alarielle. She was in a big block of white lions, banner of the world dragon on them. Then there were 2 units of archers, 2 units of Illyrian reavers, some dragon princes, and a BSB. So it was strong. Very, very happy with that pairing. As it happened, when we rolled off for general and BSB, Sam ended up being the general. So I had a level leadership 10 general. And I was the BSB. As on the video of my army, I didn't have a BSB, so it meant that over the course of the 3 games, we weren't going to be playing with a BSB reroll. Game 1 was Graeme and Matt with Nippon and Ogres. I've never seen Nippon before or played against them. The models were lovely, really, really well painted. The army was spectacular. They got my vote for best painted army, I have to say. They were lovely. Quite a lot of interesting rules. I guess they play a little bit like Empire. They're humans, but then they've got quite a few different tweaks, some really unique units, samurais and monks and demonic ogres and stuff in there. So we spent a bit of time at the start just covering what everything did. The Ogre army had a unit of Iron Guts with some characters in, a small unit of 3 bulls, and then 2 units of Yetis and a Stonehorn. The mission for this one was basically battle line, except there were 4 markers on the battlefield, and at the end of the battle, one of them randomly determined was worth an extra load of victory points. As it happened, none of us ended up claiming the right one, so that didn't really come up. The battlefield for this one, there were 2 big impassable pieces of terrain in the middle with the sort of the monolith and then the big block building as well, which we were playing as impassable. And with very little shooting on Graeme and Matt's army, we played very defensively in the first turn. We actually moved backwards on our turn 1, and their army had to split around these different objectives. So we had the monks and yetis on one side, Stonehorn, the big block with that shrine in the middle, and the ogres coming down the middle. And we basically just got to shoot at them with the iron blasters. The Stonehorn was killed on turn 1 with some really lucky rolls there because it halves the wounds, but managed to still get the 6 wounds through on it from the 2 iron blasters and take that off. And then there was just a bit of a bottleneck for them in the middle, and we could just hit them with magic and hit them with shooting. We were quite fortunate with getting the charges off. The Yetis caused a bit of nuisance. They did go through our left flank. Managed to get rid of my unit of Iron Guts. The Rhinox Riders were fairly lethal. They went into those demonic ogre models, managed to slay enough of them, and then they were unstable, so got rid. I managed to get those 3 round into the back lines, which caused a bit of panic up on that side. It was good fun game. We ended up with a 17-3 victory on that one, so quite a strong victory, a really strong start for us. It was just unfortunate for them that with the pairing, with us having the speed and how the board was set up, although we went second, it basically meant they were moving things into those firing lines for us, and we could just start blasting away. So really fun game. 2 great guys to play against. I say that Nippon army was absolutely stunning. Lovely to see Yetis as well. I don't have any of those myself, to have 2 units of them. And they put out quite a bit of damage. Strength 5, movement 7 and swift stride. They make it quickly across the board and hit quite hard when they get there. But sadly, didn't hit quite hard enough for Graeme and Matt. So that was game 1, 17-3. We've started strong. Game 2 was against our own Jay, who had taken his Lizardman army, and he'd been paired with Scott, who had Demons of Chaos. The special sort of rules for this one, there was a messenger in the middle, which was this little Chaos Dwarf you can see in the middle there. he had rules for how he would move and how he would end up charging, and he's worth 500 victory points if you killed him in combat. We deliberately set up so that he would be trying to charge Alarielle and her unit in turn 1. Unfortunately, he was quite tough to kill, and we'd been hoping to smash through him sort of in their turn so that we'd then have some freedom on ours. It didn't happen. I think it ended up taking like 5 rounds of combat to get through him. It was quite a cagey game anyway, so our Illyrian Reavers were doing a lot of fleeing and then running back up and fleeing and running back up. So it was quite tentative and cagey to start with. Eventually, we threw some charges in. The Rhinox Riders all went in. We had some charges up on the other side into Skinks, with Rhinox smashing through them. Then, it all went wrong. And we failed a panic test. There was a unit of archers who we'd put out as a bit of a sacrificial unit and to use as a redirectors. They ended up breaking from combat. They fled through Alarielle's unit, popped out the other side, fled through the Ogre unit, popped out the other side. And despite having... I don't think I was quite in range for the leadership 10 for Larry at that point, so I was on leadership 8, and we didn't have the BSB. There was no reroll. I failed that, and I turned around, and I was still quite close to the back of the board, and I went straight off, and that was it. I lost 700 points just from one panic test. We got a flank charge into a Beast of Nurgle. Didn't realise that he could issue challenges, so he then challenged the BSB, and all of those attacks on the Dragon Princes that would have hopefully smashed straight through him didn't. We ended up, rather than blowing through that in one combat, that didn't happen. So we ended up getting stuck then. The Plague Bearers could come into it. And it all started to go a little bit south. We got through 4 turns. We actually finished a little bit early. I think we misheard how long was left. And neither of our main units, so Alarielle's unit, didn't charge, and neither did the Temple Guard unit. So it was a close game for most of it. With losing that unit of Ogres, it started to go wrong. Our left flank started to collapse a bit then. The Ripperdactyls and the Plague Drones and the Beast finally managed to get into combat, started tearing through, running down that flank. So we were definitely on the back foot, and we're in a bit of a weak position. Thankfully, due to the 500 points that we got for killing that messenger, we actually ended up with a more respectable score than we would otherwise have got. So I think in the end, the scoring was 11-9 to Jay and Scott. So it's actually quite a close game. There was only about 340 odd victory points in it, but 500 of those victory points for us were that messenger. So without that, we'd have been down at about 600 victory points, and it would have been a much bigger swing for them two. As it was, a narrow defeat. So we've had a strong win, a narrow defeat. We're looking pretty good going into Game 3. Game 3, a strong win on this one would put us in very, very good contention for overall winners, as it would for Craig and Chris. They were playing Dark Elves and Estalia. Estalia, again, not one that I've ever played against before, never seen them. Beautiful models, really, really nicely painted. They play, again, quite similar to Empire, I suppose, really. There was a unit of handgunners, a unit of what would have been greatswords, I guess. They had halberds instead. But sort of that strong, tough, stubborn unit, and then a big unit of pikemen who have some additional rules, lots of different characters in it. There was a metal mage, there was sort of the equivalent of a warrior priest, there was like a duelist guy in there. As for the Dark Elves, it was fast and it was nasty. There was Hellebrand, who is just an absolute monster, unit of Doomfire Warlocks, and then a couple of Dark Riders, a couple of units of Shades, and some crossbowmen. We lost the roll-off for first turn on this one. They didn't have a great first turn, really, in terms of the shooting. All the Shades out on one side were trying to panic off some Reavers and Archers, but didn't manage to do that. I think abysmal round of shooting from them. Our first turn, we didn't really do much better. Both of the Iron Blasters shot up at bolt throwers. Both hit, but then both failed to wound. I think we threw 6 dice at casting of Dwellers, which were cast on an 18, and off 6 dice, we didn't manage to cast it. They had magical dominance, I'd say, over it. They were getting off some really good buffs with the glittering robes for the extra scaly skin saves. So those sort of greatsword guys are ending up on like a 2-up save. Even the pikemen were just a 6-up, and suddenly going down to a 4-up save. And they were quite happy to sit back, really, and let us come to them. They had a lot more shooting than we did. We were playing these green barriers as obstacles, so they were defending the obstacles. We'd been quite scared of Hellebrand, but then realising her attacks are magical and we've got Banner of the World Dragon, she hopefully wasn't going to do much damage. Despite that, with her 10 attacks, she was still slaying 1 or 2 a turn, and then those other guys with their strength 5 with their halberds were chopping through as well. It was a real slugfest. Both units were stubborn, so no one was going anywhere. It was going to be a fight to the death, and we were slowly losing that one, actually. Didn't manage to kill Hellebron. I think we got down to 1 wound left. And then right at the end, Alarielle and her unit were finally cut down. I think it was only Alarielle who was left, who then fled the combat, I think, if I remember right, but she wasn't caught. I charged my ogre bus into the pikemen, which was probably a bit of a bold move with hindsight. They swung first, they put out loads of attacks with their pikes. I was at a -1 to hit because of the obstacles. They'd also got, I think, a glittering robe off on them, or maybe enchanted blades as well. So they really caused the pain. I ended up losing that combat, but I was stubborn and stayed firm. And with how the armies were built, both ours and theirs, there weren't really that many victory points on offer, I suppose, without breaking the big units in the middle. So we scored, I think, only about 650 victory points. They got 800 or so. It ended up as a draw, 10-10, which was no good for either of us for sealing the top spot. But that was it. Our tournament was over with a win, a loss, and a draw. So with all 3 games done, we ended up finishing, I think, 4th overall. I haven't actually seen the final standings, but from chatting with others and working it out, we ended up 4th. I think Jay was possibly 2nd with his. He didn't quite win it. It was Vampire Counts and Warriors who won overall. That was a nice strong list as well. The event was absolutely fantastic. Played in really, really good spirit. It's the second event this year, I think, that we've been to, and again, can't recommend them enough. If you've got any apprehensions about going there and thinking it's going to be sort of too competitive and there's no fun, that's absolutely not the case. Every game was played in fantastic spirit. No horrible gamey gotcha moments, anything like that. Great group of guys to play against. Andy, who organised it, did a fantastic job. Had lunch put on for us as well. Really nice venue to play at, so definitely recommend it. Really, really good fun. There's another one running, I think it's 3rd of December this year, so check that out on Facebook. There's details there for that. Another doubles event, slightly different restrictions on how you build your armies and what you can take, so another challenge. Definitely hoping to get back up to that one. It would be great to see you guys there too. In terms of having a look at my army, it was a nasty list, definitely, with the 3 individual Rhinox and the Iron Blasters. I think I just suffered from not having the BSB, not having the option for that reroll. If I was to build the list again, I would swap out the Iron Guts or make it a bigger unit of Iron Guts and go with a smaller unit of Bulls, and I'd try and squeeze in a BSB. I think I could probably just about do it with dropping a Rhinox Rider and tweaking things a little bit. The Iron Guts just didn't really do enough damage when they were running out as a unit of 3, because they're swinging last. They were kind of getting hit hard before they could swing. The Yetis, when they smashed into them in game 1, they didn't get to swing. When the Ripperdactyls and other bits charged into them on game 2, again, they're swinging last. I think I only had 1 left who could swing back. But overall, quite happy with how the list performed. It wasn't how I normally play Ogres, but it was fun to use the Rhinox. They're normally comped so heavily at competitions, you don't dare take them, and I don't ever play them on the channel otherwise. So fun to play with them. As I say, Sam was a great guy to play with. Really knew his army and what to do with it. We had some really good moments with with dice rolls not going our way. But yeah, cracking event. Definitely check it out. Definitely have a look at going up to the next one if you can. And hopefully, we'll see you there.